Hi, my name is Melody, and I'm okay. In 2018, I was diagnosed with severe depression, and it changed everything. Even though I'm the same woman that I was before, I see the world differently. My dream in life is to be a public speaker, and this podcast is a way that I'm getting my voice out in the world. So on here, we're going to talk about mental health and the state of our world and just trying to find ourselves along the way. Your support means the world to me because it's literally making my dreams come true. So I hope that this is a place of healing, and I am so honored to journey with you.
Hello there. I have been better, and I'm sure you have too. Valentine's Day is coming up this Friday, and that means there will probably be lots of romantic, gushy posts that our lovely lovebirds will spew all over the internet. And if you're in a relationship, that could be so beautiful and exciting. But if you're somebody like me that is still processing a very difficult breakup, someone that is older and single, someone that's younger and single, someone that's divorced, someone whose they're in a relationship, but it's crumbling. There's a lot of us out there that these posts aren't exciting. They're actually really hurtful. And for those of us who have trauma from relationships, they not only can be hurtful, but they can be re-traumatizing. So I hope that this gets out to some people that will help them frame those posts in a better way so it hurts less people and actually advocates for them. So I'm going to give you some definitions of trauma, some actions that you might be doing that are unintentional, but they're contributing to re-traumatization, and then what does that word mean? And finally, informing you about about trauma-informed practice and how do you create an environment that is safe for people who've experienced trauma. So I think that's super important. And as always, a disclaimer that I have learned some of this in university, but I am by no means an expert. My major was not in counseling. I do work with people who have all sorts of different measures of trauma. I have trauma, but there are lots of people that are much, much, much more educated than me. So this is a starting point, and I will put a link in the description of the sources that I used so you can check them out and learn more. So let's start off just with a basic definition of trauma. This one was really helpful for me. Trauma is the lasting emotional response that often occurs from living through a distressing event. Experiencing a traumatic event can harm a person's sense of safety, sense of self, and ability to regulate emotions and navigate relationships. Long after the traumatic event occurs, people with trauma can often feel shame, helplessness, powerlessness, and intense fear. The word trigger is tossed around a lot in the vernacular and on social media. And after looking up what a trigger really is, it kind of irritates me how this word has been cheapened. Like, oh, I'm triggered. And some people genuinely are, but when I read out this definition, I see that I have used this word inappropriately where I wasn't actually triggered. So I would, maybe we can redeem that word and use it a bit more carefully because it's actually quite serious. This is when an event, a person, a phrase, a smell, anything that is experienced in the present transports somebody back to a traumatizing event in the past. This causes someone to relive the trauma with the same emotions and physical responses. So, sorry about the plane. So even though you're in the present, you could be years past this traumatic event, but something reminds you of it and you're right back there. And the last definition I'll give you is retraumatization. This is when someone is both triggered from a past event, and on top of that, there's a new traumatic event taking place in the present. So it's not a mere reminder like a trigger, but the body and the brain are reacting to the trauma of the past as well as the trauma of the present, attempting to make sense of the circumstances and survive the two concurring timelines. So you're basically fighting two wars at the same time. And your photos and captions on social media have the ability to both trigger somebody from the past, and depending on what it says or what it looks like, it can also re-traumatize them. So I have some pretty big traumatic events in my life. For example, being sexually mistreated or abused, or whatever word I want to use, as a child, and going through my breakup and ending this whole wedding, and also leaving Christianity and sort of coming out, you could say, as an atheist. So when you post about your relationship or engagement, saying this is something like a very particular kind of post, that you're posting about your relationship and also saying it's like God who honored how you waited and just for the perfect timing, and God gave you the desires of your heart. I've seen a lot of those on social media recently, which is unfortunate, and I realized it triggers my relationship trauma. It also triggers my church trauma. And on top of that, it re-traumatizes me in both of those areas. So I'm actually going through 4 layers of trauma with one post. And that's another thing with complex trauma and complex issues and things happening, overlapping on each other, that you can actually, one smell can actually remind you of multiple events. And then when people use this, in my opinion, an unhealthy, a black and white kind of, I waited, I was faithful, therefore God gave me what I wanted, like this formulaic approach to, if you're good, God will bless you kind of thing. That's really hurtful for me because it that formula just ruined my life. So seeing that again and it being perpetuated on young people, that's where kind of this re-traumatizing thing, this is still happening right now. I'm also reminded of it in my past. So when I am triggered or re-traumatized, or both, this manifests itself in personally, like this week, I was shaking in my bed. I would wake up and think about it and literally just shake and kind of gag because I felt disgusting and I felt dirty. So I needed to shower like multiple times a day. Just like a lot more in the week because I just felt like this post made me feel disgusting because it brought up these past things and present. Definitely heightened anger. I was very irritable this week because it was triggered. That's actually part of it. I had irrational thoughts. I wanted to self-harm. I really wanted to turn to substances to cope again, and was experiencing suicidal ideation. All of those are symptoms of trauma and being triggered and retraumatization. So yes, I am in therapy to work through all these things, which is my responsibility. So that hopefully I get to a day where I don't see a relationship post and experience all of those symptoms this week. But I also want to ask these listeners, will you take responsibility for what you're posting to be trauma informed? So let's describe things that are re-traumatizing, and I'll give like a general statement and then specify that and how you can apply that specifically to social media. So something that is re-traumatizing is when a person is not seen or heard. So when you post about your relationship without an awareness that it could actually hurt people, that's making you feel unseen, like you're invisible. Also, the more followers, viewers, whatever that you have, then the chance that the people who look up to you, there's a greater chance that your audience has traumatic events. So again, it's a question I have for you. Are you going to take responsibility for that and say, do I have a greater responsibility because my audience is larger to care for my audience? That's something only you can answer. I do take greater responsibility because that's an ethic of mine. Another thing that's re-traumatizing is when you violate trust. So, for example, when you say, this is like more specific, I've had people say that they admired how I used to do my relationship, and I kept it totally off of social media because I knew how much it would hurt my friends. And also, when I was hanging out with my friends, I would not mention my relationship at all. I wouldn't mention my boyfriend. And if they wanted to ask me, then I would share, but otherwise I wouldn't. And when I was with my partner, I made it like very clear that when we're around singles, there was no touching. We would sit apart from each other at parties. We wouldn't be together. We were two individuals just because I was so aware of how all of those things really hurt me when I was single. So I did the total opposite. And so people really admired that and looked up to it. And they trusted me. But now, then I watch how they are conducting their relationship, and instead of imitating the thing that they said they admired, they're actually doing all the things that hurt them when they were single. So now that I'm the single one and the one that's heartbroken, that trust is broken because they're going back kind of on their word and they're doing the very things that hurt them, and now it's hurting me. So that violates trust. And kind of along with that is when you there's a failure to ensure emotional safety. So that goes along with that is when there's broken trust, then there's that emotional safety is gone. Saying, for example, how great and hashtag blessed you are makes you unsafe for somebody who to enter in and share in my heartbreak. I think, and I'll get this later, but things that instead would make you a bit more safe is talking about shared experience and like how you still feel lonely in your relationship, or you still feel incomplete, or just the struggles that you have, but framing it as, oh my God, like I'm so blessed, like this has just been the best time of my life, everything is amazing. Because you're in a relationship now, that makes you very unsafe because you're just like on cloud nine, and I'm here in like this deep, dark pit, and I don't want to talk to somebody who's on cloud nine. I need somebody that can actually enter into my pain. Another thing is non-collaboration. So relationships are already inherently exclusive unless you're polyamorous, but still that would be exclusive to other people that are polyamorous. So there is already this inherent non-collaboration in a relationship. So you need to ask, how will you collaborate with singles, with recent or distant people who've experienced a breakup, heartbroken people, divorcees, again, people who are struggling with their relationships. And also, if you are a straight in a male-female relationship, you need to know that you're inherently privileged, that people will never question the ethics or the authenticity of your relationship because of your gender. People might question your relationship for other reasons, compatibility, one of the people is an ass, but yeah, the ethics, like people will never say, I don't think like that relationship is wrong because of your gender. So another thing is oppressive language that can be re-traumatizing. So obviously homophobic comments are not okay. And so with both of those things, oppressive language and non-collaboration, advocating for same-sex couples or advocating for singles is huge because they are marginalized. So how can you be trauma-informed when you post about your relationship? So this question will be easier to answer if you first ask, why are you posting in the first place? If it's for the validation of other people, then this question about how you're being trauma-informed isn't going to gel. It could, but not very well or very easily. My personal philosophy is, how is this going to make the world a better place? Particularly for those whom the world is a really ugly place. So that's why my entire social media presence is based on educating and advocating for people with mental health disorders, and it kind of, yeah, like people on the fringes and the margins, and the people that might not get a voice talking about that. So because kind of that's my baseline and my foundation for I am trying to make the world a better place, asking how is this going to be trauma informed comes pretty easily, and I can mold that and shape that into my posts with a lot of ease. But say you're like a food channel, that How can you be trauma informed with food? That's a totally different thing. So, asking like, what is the purpose of your page? And if it's a food channel, why are you doing it in the first place? Like, is it to share healthy recipes? Amazing. That's making the world a better place. Yeah, whatever it is, why are you posting? And if it's applicable, how can you be trauma informed? But I think even in a food channel, there's always room for advocacy and acknowledging, I'm privileged that I even have a food channel, that I have time and resources, that I can choose my food and cook, and I have the physical ability to cook it and to put it on display, and because there's lots of circumstances where you can't. Maybe somebody can't eat that food. Maybe they don't have the physical capability of cooking food. Maybe they don't have the resources to get luxury food items. Maybe they don't even have the resources to get any food items. So there's always room for you to investigate, where am I privileged in my posts, and how can I use that to give a leg up to those who don't have what I have. So how is posting about your relationship making the world a better place? I couldn't find an answer to that question. And I only saw the pain it would cause to my friends. So that's why when I was in a relationship, I just didn't post. Because I couldn't find a way to make how this would actually be helpful for those who are marginalized. And you might have a different ethic. You might have a different reason for posting. But I hope that this is some food for thought about why you're doing it. If you can find a way also, that's super cool. And I would love to know. But let me give you some tips on at least what does like a trauma-informed practice, what does a safe, not trauma-free, but a trauma-informed place look like. Something key to helping people with trauma is empowering them. So again, I've said this, how will you give a leg up to those who might be hurt by this? Affirmation and validation are huge parts of empowerment. So I can think of, saying something like, I'm really excited about this relationship, but my life and your life are just as worthy and valuable and beautiful as it was when I was single. And because I've talked about this in the Singleness and Heartbreak podcast, that every single person that I talked to had experienced somebody saying that they were lesser of a human. Their life wasn't as worthy because they were single, and that only after you get into a relationship, you kind of attain this like next level of importance in life. So of significance in society. So empowering singles and that long list of people that affirm and validate them, that they are still so important and worthy and aren't lesser up in the social hierarchy because they're not with somebody. Second thing is empathy is huge. This is the word of the decade, is huge to helping people with trauma. So sitting with somebody in their pain, imagining what it would be like in their shoes. What would it be like to be a freshly heartbroken person looking at your post that you're celebrating your relationship? Imagine what that's like and maybe frame it differently. Also acknowledge that you don't know what certain experiences are like, that you can imagine as much as you can to be in their shoes, but you never actually know until you've lived it. and asking people what it's like, and then listening to their answers, and not trying to press your own ideas or experiences on them, but just listening to them for their story. A note about both empowerment and empathy is that they require a relationship with somebody. So thinking about specific people in your life who might be hurt by this post, instead of like an abstract group of people, and like concretizing, making it more concrete. Ask if you have a good relationship with that person, ask that person how you can go about posting it. If you are friends with them, your friend will probably want to celebrate something exciting with you. But they might also give you some insight on how that could hurt them, and having a conversation about that. And so the counter side of, violating trust is being a trustworthy person. So how did you act and talk about relationships and couples when you were single? How did you think about those posts? How did you roll your eyes at them? What was your attitude towards those? And like, I find all sorts of singles complain about the bombardment on social media of like, all you see is engagements and weddings. Or if you're at a different stage of life, then you see kids, or then you see grandkids, and it's really overwhelming and hurtful. But then when you get to be engaged or married, then you bombard your social media just like everybody else. So that doesn't make sense to me, that the same people that complain about that being hurtful, them doing that very same thing. Why is it okay for you to do it now? Because there's always going to be somebody that's single. And so why is that okay? So yeah, it's like people didn't take anything from their single experience, and let that change how they do it so it doesn't hurt the next generation. They just keep doing the same thing that hurt them, and that really confuses me. So if somebody can explain that to me, that would be great. That might also go along with my personality, that whenever like if I was hurt by something, like if my parents did something, a friend, a teacher, whatever, if I was hurt by something, I make a point of changing that and not doing it to other people around me, because I know, treat people how you want to be treated. So I don't get kind of this like whole, you get into a relationship and you now are exempt from that. So I tried to model this with my student loan post, which I did this week, where I paid off my student loan, and I was really, really excited about it, and really wanted to share it with my friends and family. But I also I wanted to encourage people, because lots of people around me have student loans, and to say like, you can do it too. But I thought about all the people in my life that currently have student loans, and they're still in school, and they won't be able to pay off those loans for a really long time, because they're in different circumstances than me and have more debt than me. And so I had all those people in my mind, and when I was framing this post, I was thinking about them and going, is this worth posting because it might hurt them? And how can I frame it in such a way that it doesn't? And maybe it still did, but it's sort of, so I was aware that this could hurt other people. And how I framed it was I acknowledged my privilege in that I had help from my parents and grandparents for the first half of my education. So that cut down on a lot of loans that I would have had to pay. And I am single now and living with a roommate, but because I don't have family and kids, that means I'm also able to invest into paying off my debt faster. So there's all sorts of layers of privilege in the fact that I was able, even just the fact that I had a student loan, that I was able to go to school. So I acknowledged my privilege in that I was celebrating this. And I also said that I gave a voice to how there's currently people that are still crippled in debt, and that my political vote will be in your favor. That I look at those who are marginalized, and I think education should be the right of every person, and money shouldn't be a hindrance for you. So that my vote will reflect that, of parties that support making education more affordable for all people. And making society more affordable so that people can actually go to school. And yeah, now that my money isn't going towards, loans, I've actually taken some of that money and I'm actually investing in both local organizations that give people a leg up, and overseas organizations. So I wanted to do both, to invest in my community directly and in communities overseas. So I'm actually taking those finances and literally giving back. So I didn't put that in the post, but I also wanted to say that here, that that was 3 ways of showing, this is how I acknowledge my privilege. I also acknowledge that you might still be crippled in debt, and that I will vote for you politically, and I will give my money to you. So, but also I wanted to celebrate this really momentous thing, and also give myself a pat on the back that I also had to say no to some things that I really wanted, and budgeting is really hard, and getting out of debt is hard, and it takes determination and prioritizing and cutting off non-essential things. So I'm also proud of myself for doing that. And if anybody wants help on budgeting, I could maybe help you or point you to some really great resources to help you budget, to help you get out of debt. So that's how I, in a different way, it was student loans and not a relationship, but that's how I modeled posting something with an awareness that it might hurt other people, and that how did I live out that tension of wanting to celebrate something really cool while also advocating for people who aren't in that place yet. So it is time for me to go off the grid. Valentine's Day will be too much. Even though I've made this posty podcast, I know triggering and re-traumatizing posts are still going to be out there. Valentine's Day is just a hard day, and I need to take it to be with myself. And I'm also, unfortunately, feeling that I'm kind of close to burning out. For a couple weeks now, I have been working 50 hours, and working nights and days, and it's been a lot, and trying to stay on top of this YouTube channel and my podcast is a lot. So I can see burnout in the horizon, and I'm starting to feel it, but I want to take precautionary measures so I don't get to that place. And I also just need to recover and let my creative juices kind of flow again. Because I'm feeling a little bit dry, and then I'm at the end of a marathon, and I would like to take some time to kind of get my ducks back in a row and be inspired. And I guess something kind of to prepare yourself, because I wasn't prepared. If you're going to post like in a trauma-informed way, or post and trying to be sensitive to other people, something I wasn't expecting, where somebody was making fun of suicide. And so I just like made a longer comment about like, this is kind of concerning to me because suicide is really serious. And I gave like, the number of like the mental health hotline and the suicide hotline. And yeah, just that like suicide shouldn't ever be made light of or fun of or normalized. That's a big thing. I don't want suicide to be normalized. I have lost 2 people to suicide. So it is not a laughing matter to me. And unfortunately, I had a number of people push back and say like, it was just a joke, and like, nobody asked you. And like, I was making a big deal out of it. And I really wasn't expecting that to be tossed around a bit for advocating for this. So I guess that's something to prepare yourself. Because that kind of hurt that, I was expecting people to be like, oh shit, like I didn't realize, like, and I'm a huge jokester and totally take things too far. So yeah, but I wasn't expecting people to actively be against my advocacy. And yeah, I adore my job. I was at a different place, and I was tossed around a bit too at work. So I'm just feeling that my heart that is for caring and advocating for people has been a bit squashed recently. And so I'm needing to take some time to just step back and take care of myself. And I am thankful for my listeners that are very supportive of that. And I am the one that puts all the pressure on myself. So I'm giving myself permission to take a break. This was a one-take podcast because, as I said, I'm feeling kind of burnt out, but I really wanted to get this out there before Valentine's Day. So this whole thing was a bit raw, a bit jaded, a bit angry, a bit of the result of being triggered. And so I apologize. And I'm working towards being able to talk about these things with a little less edge, a little more grace, a little more softness. But I felt like this was really important and I cared a lot about it. So hopefully you can bear through it. Thank you so much for listening. And I will not see you next week. But when I do see you next, I think I'll have some pretty good stuff. Take care, everyone. I love you. Bye.